Today I want to talk about intestinal blockages or obstructions and what I do to help ease my symptoms when I have a partial obstruction. Before I begin, I want to note that there's a huge difference between a partial obstruction and a total obstruction. If you have a total bowel obstruction, there's nothing you can do at home to ease that, and you should go to the emergency room and be seen as quickly as possible because that's really dangerous. And the way to tell the difference between a partial obstruction and a total obstruction as someone with an ostomy is that if you have a total obstruction, you're going to have absolutely no output, nothing in the bag, and no gas output either. Nothing's going to be coming through. And if I've had no output at all for 24 hours or more, that's when I go to the emergency room. So if that's the situation that you're in, please go see your doctor, call your doctor as soon as possible. You really can't treat that at home, and that's quite dangerous because if you leave a bowel obstruction for long enough, it can perforate, which means that your bowels explode or get a leak. And then you can end up with sepsis and you can die, and that's no fun. So definitely see a doctor if that's the case. I'm not a doctor, so please take what I say with a grain of salt. This is just what works for me. Also, my name is Alex. I'm an adult entertainer, and I'm also a person with an ostomy. I'm not an expert, but I do have 5 years of experience of living with an ostomy, first with an end ileostomy and now with a loop ileostomy. So I do have some knowledge about what to do when you have a partial blockage. Partial blockages can be so painful. Generally, if I can't pass my partial obstruction within a few hours, or if it continues overnight into the morning, I will go to the emergency room just because I have a very low pain tolerance. I can't handle it. And sometimes my partial blockages need a bit of help passing, either through a catheter or they can do a nasal gastral tube, an NG tube, which goes up and down your nose and into your gullet and onwards, and they suck everything up. I can tell when I'm having a partial obstruction because I get really bad abdominal pain and cramping. I'll have less output in my ileostomy bag than normal, and when I do have output, it's just pure liquid, like transparent liquid. That's how I know that the food that I've eaten that's sitting around in my guts isn't moving, but just the liquid that's moving past it. So the first tip that I have, the first thing I do when I have a partial obstruction is I try and drink the hottest water possible, and not in gulps. You don't want to add a whole bunch more liquid that's going to pile up and cause more pain and more issues. I just take little sips of the hottest liquid I can bear. I don't usually add a tea bag or anything. It's just plain hot water, but you can add a peppermint tea bag. Some people find that helps, and a little bit of lemon juice to kind of stimulate and get things going. Otherwise, it's just hot water. You don't want to take any laxatives. Laxatives are generally not safe for a person with an ostomy, with an ileostomy rather. So I would definitely wait for a doctor to recommend that before ever taking a laxative. It's counterindicated for people who have an ileostomy, so don't do that. The other thing that I do that my doctor recommended, and it's the last thing you want to do when you're having an obstruction, is get up and walk around. The movement and walking will actually help your bowels to start moving and wake up and do the job they're supposed to do. But again, it's so painful. Sometimes it's just the last thing that you can fathom doing. You can also do some stretching. There are a lot of stretches you can do that will help get your bowels moving. You could easily search yoga for constipation or stretches for constipation, and doing things like a child's pose or kind of bicycling your legs can help. Some twists can help. It's hard to want to do any stretching when you feel like your guts are ripping, but walking and stretching are really the best tools you have to help clear a partial obstruction. To help the muscles of my abdomen relax, I get a hot water bottle and I place that not directly on the stoma, but next to it or on different parts of my abdomen. You want to be careful with hot burning heat right on your stoma because your stomach doesn't have any nerve endings, so you're actually not going to be able to feel when it's too hot. So you don't want to cause more problems than you already have. I tend to use a heating pad or a hot water bottle, and I just put it kind of in a rotation up on the upper part of my abdomen, lower, central part, and then upper here, lower here. But I just avoid the stoma itself, and I move the heating pad around. I also move from laying on my right side to moving on my left side because sometimes that can ease the pressure a little bit. I find for me often the right side, laying on the right side hurts a lot, but that's often where I get a lot of the output finally passing. So hot water bottle, heating pad, but again, not directly on the stoma because you don't want to burn yourself. The other things that I think about when I'm having a partial obstruction is just, what are the things that are generally going to give me high output? What are the things that'll generally give me diarrhea, which are the things that I usually avoid? And that'll be like artificial sweeteners like Splenda, sucralose. Generally, that's going to go right through me. So if I'm having the obstruction, having a little packet of Splenda can sometimes help ease things up. When you have a partial blockage, sometimes you might find that your stoma changes shape and size. Sometimes my stoma gets so wide and flat when I have a partial blockage that I find that the way that I cut my flange starts to almost cut off circulation to my stoma, and I get a lot of pain in that area. So what I'll actually do is take my appliance off completely. I'll sometimes sit without an appliance for a while, just with like some towels or paper towels, or you can like sit in the bathtub or in the shower and just give it some time to like decompress, and that can really help, because once it swells due to that irritation, then the way you cut your flange is going to cut off the stoma, and it'll be even harder to get your output moving through. So I would take a new ostomy appliance, cut a much larger hole, much larger than you'd normally need. You can measure your stoma and see where it's at and give it like an extra millimeter or two even, and then put that on. And that I find really helps with passing the partial blockage as well. Just giving your stoma more room to breathe. And then obviously as soon as the blockage has passed, you can put back on your regular size. But sometimes I find my stoma stays swollen for a little while. So definitely prepare for that as well. The last thing I'll recommend for now, and I'll definitely add more thoughts if I think of them, is just to avoid eating and drinking anything aside from sips of hot water. You don't want to be putting more food in. You just don't want to add more and compound that blockage to the point where it becomes a total obstruction, because then you've got to go to the hospital. They got to stick the NG tube in. They got to catheterize it. It's a whole pain. So if we can avoid being in the hospital, that is great. Thank you for watching. I hope that this has helped you if you're having a blockage right now. And please drop any other advice you have in the comments, because I'd love to hear your ideas for the next time that I inevitably have a blockage. And stay healthy.